Now, leaking roofs, inadequate beds and furniture for staff and patients, and lack of transport are key challenges facing the Ponyentanga Health Center in the Upper West region. A 20-bed ward started 3 years ago to ease congestion at the facility has also been abandoned and has now turned into toilet and urinary by the people. The health center, established 27 years ago, has since not seen an inch or renovation. This came to light at the first Deba held by the health center at the Ponyentanga, and they are appealing for support. Joy News Upper West Regional Correspondent Rafiq Salam reports from Ponyentanga.
The Ponyentanga Health Center was established in 1996 by the government of Ghana through support from the Danish Development Agency, DANIDA. At the time of its establishment, it was the only health facility attending to the health needs of residents in Ponyentanga, Ga, Nyole, Taningna, and all communities surrounding it, and all located in the eastern corridor of the district, which was then under the Ward District. The health center is now 27 years old and has now been elevated to the status of a sub-district with 7 functional chiefs compound under it. It has a population of 8,813 people with 1 physician assistant, 36 nurses, 1 auxiliary staff, and 3 casual workers. The cruel reality, however, is that since the establishment of the health center, it has not seen an inch of renovation, thereby serving as a disincentive for both the clients and the staff. The workers, however, are undeterred in their pursuit of getting quality health care for the people. Emmanuel Potena is a physician assistant and in charge of the Ponyentanga Health Center.
Ponyentanga Health Center was selected as a model facility in the district, which is a plus to us. Also, at our end of year review for 2022, Ponyentanga Health Center was awarded the 3rd position with a citation, tabletop fridge, and some stationaries due to our quality of care and best performances.
The Deba was held on the theme community engagement and participation, the key to improve health status of the people. It brought together all key stakeholders in the sub-district, including minority Fulani settler groups, to deliberate on key issues affecting the delivery of quality health service at the Ponyentanga Health Center.
We have been able to form the Fulani community into the health sector integration. We have a Fulani rep in the sub-district health management committee. We have formed Fulani volunteers. We have them on board. We have formed Fulani mother-to-mother support group, and we have opened a Fulani mother-to-mother support group account for them, which is one of the first of its kind in the region, if not of the country.
Emmanuel Potena, however, laid bare some challenges they are facing despite the successes struck.
The facility, as you see, if you take a look at it, the ceiling, the zincs and the ceilings are leaking. And now we are going to the rainy season. Only God will see us through. The facility, if you look around, you can see a vehicle that is parked under the mercy of the sun. Whilst we are having challenges with transportation, how to move our clients, especially when we have a pregnant woman to transport to the regional hospital, is always a challenge. And it's parked under the mercy of the sun. The nature of our beds for our patients, both pregnant women and the general patients, is not in good condition, and it is an chairs to sit whilst we are taking care of our patients is a challenge. Even the patients don't have sitting places, and the few ones that we have, they are in bad state.
The assembly member for Ponyentanga electoral area, Amadou Kuri Hamid, is however deeply worried about the construction of a 20-bed ward to ease the congestion at the health center, but whose construction has stalled. He appeals for help for its completion.
But it's almost 3 years today and nothing has been done. If you enter inside of it, part of it is collapsing, and I don't know. So as we speak, some of the patients are using it as a toilet room, and others are using it as what? A urinal pit. And it is also a hard out for thieves and criminals. So I'm therefore appealing to the public or any benevolent authority that can help complete this place for us.
Reporting for J News, Rafik Salam, Poyentanga.
Our government has been criticized for not having a game plan for the International Monetary Fund World Bank spring meetings in Washington, D.C., USA. According to a partner at Ishmael Yamson and Associates, Michael Yamson, government's inadequate preparation for the International Monetary Fund to conclude an IMF program is problematic. There had been back and forth regarding negotiations with the country's external creditors, whilst release from the Finance Ministry indicates government may consider a second round of domestic debt restructuring, particularly with individual and pension bondholders. Speaking to Joy News, Mr. Yamson, however, cautioned government not to destroy their household incomes in the name of securing of an IMF program at all costs.
Government didn't seem to leave here with a game plan. And government has not been consistent in communicating its own game plan with Ghana. We are hearing government respond a lot to what the external partners are asking, are demanding, are suggesting, are offering. Ghana itself does not have a game plan. That, for me, is very obvious. Otherwise, there shouldn't even have been a hint of going back to pensioners, independent bondholders. Because remember, these so-called savings that are being asked of Ghana to demand from domestic bondholders, they are actually household incomes. So if Washington and the externals care so much about Ghanaian citizens and Ghanaian households and living standards, then the question becomes, how do you ask the government to come back and destroy household incomes in the name of debt restructuring? I think that there is a lack of understanding about what all this means for the average person on the street. We have left and gone to Washington without any political consensus about what it is that we are going to do about the fact that this government is unable to generate enough tax revenue. Ghana has a an informal sector that's about twice as large as the formal sector. We are deepening the tax burden on the formal sector. The informal sector doesn't shoulder its fair share. And there's no political consensus to make sure that that is going to happen. Yet we are in Washington discussing. The economy is skewed. We are hopelessly tied into trade that we cannot finance. We haven't had a consensus on that. Yet we are in Washington speaking. People are beginning to starve in this country. One of your previous speakers talked about 65% of people in Ghana not being able to have adequate access to food security. And then we are in Washington talking about savings as if it's some technical thing. It's a very real thing. It's about people's incomes.
Michael Yamson is a partner at Ishmael Yamson Associates. Meanwhile, senior economist Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie is cautioning government against underestimating the complexity and sophistication of both external and domestic creditors in negotiations for a debt restructuring. According to him, the government must not apply timelines when negotiating a deal with them. He's been speaking to Joy News.
We should not, underestimate the complexity and the sophistication of the creditors, both domestic and external creditors. They are all very complex and sophisticated, and therefore dealing with them is difficult to put timelines on whether you finish in May or April or June. You may have your plan as a government that you want to secure it by April, but what about the creditors? You deal with China and so what you are done with just 1.7 billion, and then you go to Paris Club 1.9 billion, and then you go to the other creditors, Eurobond market $13 billion. I'm for one, I will not be emphatic about the time when we will get this assurance.
Now, the Secretary General of Africa's Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, Wamkele Mene, is concerned that countries such as Ghana and many others across the continent which are grappling with sovereign debt crisis may not get increased funding or development assistance from the Bretton Woods, as was the case in the past. The International Monetary Fund is currently holding its spring meeting where global economic recovery is key on the agenda for participating actors. But Secretary General of Africa's Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, Wamkele Mene, has bemoaned the situation, adding that Africa is not getting increased capital inflows. Blessed Soga report from Cape Town, South Africa, where the first in-person business forum on accelerating the Continental Free Trade Area opens.
So we're in the heart of Cape Town. This is where private sector from across African countries on the continent are gathering here as the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Business Forum opens this week. We're expecting the South African government to make its initial statement through President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will be gracing the occasion. But today's and this week's occasion is as part of moves by the Continental Free Trade Area to accelerate what is seen as the magic wand that would transform many African continents through trade, investments and business opportunities. Is the reason why members from private sector, all international actors, including the AFTA Secretariat, are all gathered here in Cape Town with a view of hearing from the private sector their challenges regarding the Continental Free Trade Area and to make plans and initiatives that will help to accelerate what is now being known as the African Continental Free Trade Area, which will create potentially over $1 trillion economy for the African continent. Activity started off with the Secretary General, Wamkele Mene, raising concerns about the global economic downturn and how that is adversely, in fact, impacting African countries, including Ghana, which is now facing a sovereign debt crisis. He's been bemoaning the situation of a reduced support from the International Monetary Fund and other Western allies, which hitherto were giving aid to the African continent. However, given the situation in which many of the African countries find themselves, the belief is that through trade, Ghana and other African countries will be able to develop. And that's been key on the agenda for Wamkele Mene. He's also hopeful that the business community will take advantage of the Continental Free Trade Area in order to increase business opportunities across the continent.
But what is clear from the statements that are coming out of Washington from Monday until the end of the week is that the direction of global capital is going the wrong way. Global capital is not coming south. It is remaining north. The sovereign debt crisis that we're experiencing in Africa, it's clear from what the statements that have come out that the posture is not to be sympathetic to the sovereign debt crisis in Africa. So the question then is, what do we do? In the short term, it would be good to have access to finance, but as I've just said, it's looking increasingly unlikely. In fact, what we are hearing is that the orientation for providing finance must move from development finance and fighting poverty to climate change. That's what we are hearing very, very clearly. That if you focus on climate change, all your problems will be solved. And you will not have any problems. So my own personal opinion is that we're not going to see increased volumes of support, development support, coming from the institutions whose mandate it is. Then the question is, what do you do as the African continent to build resilience, to make sure that when the next crisis hits, that you have the capacity to deal with that crisis. So intra-Africa trade is the best tool that we have at resilience. Intra-Africa trade is what is within our reach as Africans to mitigate the risk of reduced support for development finance, which I think is unfortunate, but it looks increasingly like it is going to happen, that these reductions will happen. So we have a tool in the trade where if we boost intra-Africa trade, we will see the contribution to GDP, to Africa's combined GDP increasing. I just mentioned the projections by the World Bank. By the year 2035, the potential for increasing Africa's GDP. So I think the tool is within our hands, given what we are hearing coming out of the World Bank spring and World Bank and IMF spring meetings. On the question of third country trade, the agreement is clear. Pre-existing bilateral trade arrangements will remain. We are not a customs union, and so that means that individual countries in Africa continue to have the sovereign right to negotiate with whoever they want to outside of the AfCFTA market. The only condition is that if you trade with a third country outside of Africa, outside of the AfCFTA, you have to provide the same or better treatment to AfCFTA countries. That's the only condition. But as I said earlier, the next step of Africa's integration is to become a customs union, which means that negotiating with a third country will have to happen as a bloc, as an entire continent, whether we're negotiating with India.
Reporting from Cape Town, Blessed Suga for Joy News, Accra.
But there's more on Ghana's quest to get a deal from the IMF and the outcomes of the IMF World Bank spring meetings. Later on, probe at 8 p.m. with MFR Proud as she engages Ghana's Minister for Information, Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah. So do make a date for more on that. Now, the process of swearing an oath to tell the truth in court is required. However, the belief that the truth will give you victory has been debunked by lawyers. They say speaking the truth alone doesn't guarantee victory in a case, but the ability to prove with undeniable evidence and fact is what may tip you for a win in court. Speaking on the law Sunday, lawyers Musa Ahmed and Daniel Kran says cases must be backed with well-meaning fact and a well-trained lawyer to assist you. We are speaking on a case is decided at the court. Here I accept.
When you go to court with your case, there are three fundamental things that you need to concern yourself with. And these are, number one, the facts of the case. Facts of the case. Number two, your evidence. And number three, the law that is applicable to your case. So a party doesn't just go to court to tell the court that this is the truth. We have to understand that there is nothing like truth before a case is gone into. When a judge sits to determine a case, the judge does not know the truth before the judge will go into the matter. And the truth that we concern ourselves with in court is a conclusion that we draw from your facts and your evidence. So when you have your facts and your evidence and we marry them together, we decide whether they are credible conclusions that we can draw. And so when we say truth in court, we mean the establishment of credible, believable facts.
If you file a case, you must have basis for filing the case. You must have legal facts. You have to be able to tell your story to the judge. And the law has parameters within which your facts must fall within. If you don't situate your fact situation clearly within the parameters, your case will fail. Now, when the facts are presented to the court, the rule is that you don't mix
your facts with evidence. When you come in practical terms, the judge will have to consider the facts, the evidence. He has to evaluate the evidence. He has to apply the relevant law. Whether the parties know the law or not, then it is the duty of the judge to apply the law to the facts of the case and come to a conclusion. The law mandates the judge to come to a conclusion with reasons. You must give reasons for your decision. If you don't give reasons for your decision, when the case goes on appeal, it will be set aside. Now, there has to be a conclusion. You have to pronounce on the reliefs that the party is seeking. Let's say the party is asking for recovery of a vehicle that was unlawfully taken from his premises. And that is the relief he's seeking. At the end of the case, when he has presented his facts, he has brought the evidence, he has been cross-examined, he's finished with the trial, it is the duty of the judge to make the decision and finally make the orders to either grant the relief or the case that the person or the claim that the person is making, or to refuse it.
And there's more. Do make a date same time next week with Samson Ladeyini for more. But some selected judges and members of civil society organizations have validated a Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative Right to Information Training Manual for judges in Ghana. The initiative says the efforts leading up to the passage of the Right to Information law were marked by robust civil society advocacy, including engagement and lobbying of the legislature and the executive. Programs manager of the initiative, Esther Poku Eduhene, says the training manual will help apprise judges of both local and international dynamics of the law.
The Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, in partnership with the Coalition on the Right to Information and then the Judicial Training Institute, saw it's necessary to come up with a guide, something like a guide to be used to support the training of judges on the interpretation of the access to information law. Because of course when somebody is denied access and the person goes to court, the person is expecting that the person's rights will be adhered to or will be promoted. So what we are seeking to do is that, of course, we all know that the right to information is a constitutional right. It's already with or without a right to information law, it is a right, but this is also a part of a process to support the implementation, to support, because we know that those who are supposed to make decisions when it comes to when somebody applies the law also need some technical support to be able to make the right kind of decisions. There are international standards, there are international best practices, so we thought to put all this information together. And Ghana is not the only country that has taken this path. There are so many countries that have gone ahead of us when it comes to right to information. So we thought it wise that we will gather evidence from other jurisdictions when it comes to court decisions on RTI. What does it take? What does it mean? What are they saying on other jurisdictions? Just to guide us, so that it means that for us we are even we are in the safe hands, because we have the room to learn from other countries, the best practices. We have the room to adopt those that are good and then also manage some the bad decisions that come up. So this is basically one of the process to support the successful implementation of Ghana's right to information law.
Now, the Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, and a member of the RTI Coalition, Kojo Pumpuni Asante, said the endorsement by the key stakeholders has now given the Judicial Training Institute the green light to go ahead and train judges with the manual.
That part of that RTI can really transform our records keeping and management and retrieval systems. And we need to put money. It really needs some resourcing. Our current economic situation obviously makes it harder, to kind of push the agenda across institutions. But we might identify certain institutions that are so critical to nation building that we start with them and say, let's resource them so that it can improve the access to information generally. We had a validation meeting with the judiciary on a judicial training manual on the RTI. I think even when we were fighting for the passage of the bill, one of the things that I think everybody was concerned about was to make sure that judges are apprised with the law, they understand where the law is coming from, what its objectives are, its purposes, so that when they are interpreting the law, they have a better grounding of how the law is being applied, not just in Ghana, but internationally. So it's we've taken a long time to come to this point, but we had the Judicial Training Institute here. We had judges, from different upper and lower courts who to come and look at the manual and to validate it so that it can be used to train judges.
Well, that's all we have for you on Joy News Prime, but there's more on myjoyonline.com for you. myjoyonline.com, and you could get yourself more on happenings around the world there. My name is Razak Musbau, and thanks for being a part of it.